Hey everyone, it's Sunday, and it's usually a day where I kind of take some time and maybe work on a new project or something. In this case, I am working at this Switch versus last generation, or the Tegra X1 versus the last generation configurations with the Wii U, 360, and PS3, and it's taking a lot longer than I thought it would, but it will get done throughout this week. It's just there's a lot of information that I was deep diving into, and a lot of stuff that people don't really agree on with tech specs for these systems, which is a little odd, you would think, right? But Evan sent over the Patreon AMA, and I thought we would go over it because it'd be a lot of fun. Some of the questions are pretty interesting, and I think would be a good time to kind of talk about even in the comments, and I'll, of course, talk about them here. Now, if you don't know, the Patreon has been kind of reformed, and Evan even went through and added tiers for different things. If you are a $1 patron member, you can vote on the different AMA questions for your favorite ones, or if you're part of the $5 tier, you can suggest questions and they'll be voted on. So let's get into some of the questions that Evan sent over. First one comes from, well, Evan, Kimmerk's project. Biggest fear in the future of gaming, and this is an interesting question because I think everyone's going to have a different answer for this because they see it differently. Now, I see gaming as like an industry-wide thing, right? Because I kind of view it as like business models around because, of course, if these companies don't have good business models, they're not going to be around. We saw that with Sega. They exited the console market because their business model kind of fell apart there with the Sega Saturn, then into the Dreamcast. It just became too costly. They weren't making any money. And my biggest fear right now is the stagnation, I guess. The console generation is becoming very stagnant, and really no one wanting to enter the gaming division anymore. In fact, I would be concerned, which again blows my mind, people wanted different companies to leave the console market right now. There are people who want Microsoft to leave. There are people who want Nintendo to leave. And that would be my biggest fear, is if we dwindle down to where we have one, even two, I guess. I mean, one would be the worst case scenario, where we just have like one console creator, right? One person making the consoles and everyone just making the games, because then that console will be pretty expensive, and the games would probably be pretty expensive because they would charge a higher licensing fee on it. Mostly prices would just go up because there's no competition. That's the problem. And if you go back to like generations ago, there were really more consoles being made from different companies. I mean, let's go back to, say, the Nintendo. Sega enters the fold, right? After Atari pretty much blows up the entire video game market, Sega enters against Nintendo. And then we go from there, and then later we see Sony enter, and then we have Microsoft enter. So all these different companies are starting to show up in the console scene, and all we've seen since then are different companies leaving these generations. So obviously Sega doesn't do it anymore, and people were even calling for Nintendo to leave at one point with the Wii U. And it would get to a point where things would be very expensive, there would be zero competition, and there would be zero drive to innovate in really the console space. And that would be my biggest fear, is if we ever get to that point. I would hope we don't, because it's a pretty big business right now with entertainment and games in general. Despite them kind of becoming mini computers, it would still be bad if anyone left, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Sony, or Nintendo. I hope they all stick around. In fact, I hope companies enter this market. That's why I was excited to hear about Atari before we heard more about it. I was hoping they were actually going to enter the market as a serious competitor, not something that's going to be kind of made fun of and kicked around, as it doesn't sound like it's going to be anything major. Next question comes from Sean Sweeney. Is game publishers doing digital releases only? And that's an interesting topic, because here's the thing. I don't mind digital releases as not an everyday thing. You know, I don't want digital releases to happen constantly and no physical releases, because I like my physical media. But I understand why there are some cases you don't want a game to release physically if you know it's not going to sell well. Sonic Forces isn't coming out in Japan physically for the Xbox One because there's no Xbox Ones there to sell to. That makes sense as a digital release there. I don't think anyone in Japan's really going to oppose that. It's not a big deal to them because there's 80,000 Xbox Ones there. But if Sonic Forces came out as a digital-only game, that would be... I'd be okay with it to a degree, but I would understand that that's kind of an issue, because that means physical games are kind of taking a back seat. I know PC gamers are used to it by now, but services like limited run games I really like, because they're taking these digital games, turning them physically, and I know we are going towards that world where there will just be all digital games. I think we all understand this. We just don't know when that time is going to come. Is it going to be 10 years from now? Is it going to be 5 years from now, right? Is it next generation? I don't think it's next generation, but I do see 10, 15 years from now, we look back on us now, how we use game discs and cartridges, and we kind of laugh at us. But I hope that's not the case, and I hope places like limited run games stick around, and I hope different companies start to do the same thing as limited run games. We have a bunch of different places to get these releases from, because limited run games can't do every single digital release. But if there's different companies like them, then maybe we can get more digital releases on physical form for collectors like myself. I think the younger audience is fine with digital games, and I think going forward, they'll get used to it. It'll just be for old people like me, obviously, that like the game box art, the manual that would hopefully come with it, right? And any cool little things with it. But I do think we're going towards digital future. I just don't look forward to it. Next question is R. Potter, GT16. He actually does the timestamps, and he actually has two questions, it looks like here. His first one is, can you tell us more about how you and Kimmerix decided to try and make a YouTube channel? And that's actually an interesting question, because there was no, we've been thinking about it for a while, at least I have. It was something I always wanted to do for fun and kind of play around with the idea, because I loved, one of my favorite things back in the day was to watch G4 TV on TV in general. And we would obviously watch all kinds of cool programming, and then the news shows would come on. I would love watching things like X-Play, obviously, Cinematheque. I loved Icons. I mean, the list goes on, and I loved those different shows. One of my favorite ones was Electronic Playground. Victor Lucas still does video on YouTube, by the way, and it reminds me of those days on G4 TV, so I actually watched that on YouTube. But I loved those shows, and I always wanted to have a really cool news show about video games and media and stuff like that, and that's kind of my end goal at some point. And of course, it's a build, it's a climb, I know this, but that's really one of the reasons I wanted to do it. And Evan and I remember we were just sitting around at work one day, and I was like, I might just try to go make YouTube and see if we can do it. And it was an interesting time, because I kind of just made the channel, played around with the idea. I actually did some Dragon Ball videos, Dragon Ball Z, because I love Dragon Ball in general, more so than any other anime. Gundam Wing is pretty close, but I like Dragon Ball a lot. And I remember some of the first videos I did was just about Dragon Ball, just because I enjoyed it. And one of them caught on. I think it was about Goku and Chi-Chi kissing or something, from what I remember. And I remember I argued in the favor that they had before, even though the writers made this weird mistake saying they hadn't. And that actually got some traction. And from there, I started doing more video game stuff. I talk about the Switch and ARM architecture and RAM, and then it kind of took off from there. So it was more so a mixture of media. That's why it's Spawnwave Media. But I obviously I want a video game news show that's pretty cool overall in presentation and interest. That's kind of my end goal. But really, we just kind of played around with it. I just did it. That's the big thing. People always want to do YouTube. You need to do it. Just go do it. And even if you don't have the best camera, the best microphone, anything, just do it. See what happens. You never know. And then from there, his other part of the question is, what made you decide that YouTube was the place to start rather than working with a more traditional media site? So we actually played around with that a while ago. We actually wanted to do a website even, and I did one for a little while, and we never really went anywhere else with the site. I think it's down now. We didn't really do too much with it after that. But we played around with the idea of making a website because, again, I wanted to do video game news stuff, and the website is the easiest way in. I mean, you can build a website, like almost overnight now, and you start typing up stuff, even if it's worth WordPress, and all of a sudden, boom, you're on the internet. And that was cool. But one thing I realized very quickly is to keep up with any gaming websites, you need a team of dedicated people. You're not going to do it yourself. It's so hard to do it yourself. And I also figured something else out. I don't like writing like crazy. I much prefer to be on camera talking rather than typing up long, articles and stuff for websites. This is not my thing. So I quickly realized that in order to stay relevant online, you need to be updating that website, and I'm not even kidding, like 8 to 10 times a day, constant updates. So if you're one person, you're going to do nothing but write, and they're going to be smaller articles that are news stuff. You're going to do nothing but write for 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and there's a good chance that you maybe get like 10 visitors to your website total, despite you spending that much time on it, and you just get lost so easily now with how many websites are out there. And I figured out, obviously, YouTube has more traffic and more possibilities with how YouTube kind of suggests videos to get noticed. Next up is Delapo from Get Good Gaming, asking, actually has two questions as well, asking, so there are many YouTube channels in your circle of influence that have taken many stances on different things associated with the Switch. One such topic has been whether certain experiences belong on the Switch. Where do you stand on that? I'm not really sure what this question is really implying. It asks, one such topic has been whether certain experiences belong on the Switch, and I'm not 100% sure what they mean with that. I may be talking about how mobile games have moved over to the Switch, and they don't like that, or maybe that because there are violent games showing up on the Switch, and Nintendo's not usually a violent violent company with their games, which is an odd thing since obviously Bayonetta 2, Mad World, there are a lot of mature rated games. Even Manhunt 2 is on the Wii. I mean, what kind of audience is that to, right? I don't think grandmothers buying it for bowling are going to be strangling and cutting people up in Manhunt 2. But as your question, I have to see what YouTube channels you're talking about, my circle of influence. Maybe you guys can let me know in the comments down below that really just on what their stances are on different things associated with the Switch. For certain experiences belong on the Switch. I'm not 100% sure there, maybe because it's portable, so you can have like quick gaming session type things. Like when I play Xenoverse 2, for example, I can play a parallel world quest and then turn the thing off after 5 minutes and I have completed something technically. But you'll have to let me know down in the comments what exactly you mean by that. However, his other question is a little more straightforward, and that's, so Ukulele is still far off from the horizon, it seems. Do you believe this game still has a chance on the Switch? Okay, this is an interesting one because I talked about it, and I think it's going to struggle more than it would if it had come out when it should have, right? It should have come out a while ago. I mean, this game should have been out on the Switch in April, May at the latest. You know, when it came out on the other systems, maybe a month later. The weirdest thing I've ever seen here is this game taking this long. It's built on Unity. They had to wait for apparently the next version of Unity to come out for them to make it work, which is weird because there's Unity games on the Switch now. Nothing to the scope of Ukulele, but I do think they have worked themselves into a corner because I feel like Ukulele, it's going to sell. Don't get me wrong. Switch gamers want new games to play, especially right now. It's just like any other console's launch life where it'll launch and then people are buying up games that they normally wouldn't, 4 or 5 years later. But the Switch is interesting because it's also a portable system. It's so new. This hybrid concept is so new to people. Playing something like a ukulele portably is so mind-blowing to so many people. Not even just ukulele, Zelda, right? I mean, you could name so many different games, third-party games even, NBA, 2K18 being portable. It's so mind-blowing to people. I do think it'll still sell, but I don't think it'll sell what it would have if it had come out in obviously April, May, because it would have been selling from May to now obviously already. So they would have got the initial burst of traffic, and a lot of people have played it. I've played it. I've talked to a lot of people who have played it because it's available on several systems, and I don't know if they'll double dip for that game. I don't know if that game's worth double dipping for us. That's kind of my opinion there. I don't think it's going to do as well as it could have. All right, ladies and gentlemen, those are all the AMA questions from the Discord Patreon. So all the patrons who asked questions, thank you very much. Everyone who voted, because people did vote on them too, thank you. And if you want to ask questions, basically the first week of every month, I will do this. We'll pull questions. Evan will pull questions, send them to me, and we'll film them right here and give everyone who asked questions and everything a shout out. So it'll be a lot of fun going forward. And like I said, so if you want to be one of the people asking questions, head on over to Patreon. The link is down in the description. And you too can ask a question on the AMA videos here, and we'll go through them and have some fun. So thanks, guys, for watching. I hope you're having a fun Sunday. Go watch some football or play some games. And I'll see you guys definitely tomorrow morning for Newswave. The Switch, hopefully the Switch versus Last Generation video. Hopefully it's up sometime early this week, whether it's Tuesday or Wednesday, but it's a lot longer than I thought it would be. I'll say that. There's a lot of information I have to really figure out for some of this stuff, because some of this information is flat out missing. I know, it's crazy, but thanks guys for watching. I'll see you tomorrow morning for Newswave.